They just said something on Kyle Pitts that just interesting.
Mm. We will talk. We could talk about that in a minute. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into the Week 15 edition of the Sunday Sideline Report, sponsored by the Dugout of Millwood here on the Sports Insanity Network. Mike, the old ops guy, with you, celebrating a Week 15 already.
I can tell you there is one person who's very happy that it's week 15, and that is my wife, knowing that football is almost over. However, as all of America just heard her chime in, thank God. However, she keeps forgetting that Dallas is going to the playoffs, so we're gonna have football into Sunday.
So you have an
Into
extra
February.
game.
Into February.
Let me rephrase it. You have an extra two games right now.
Yes, an extra
If
2 weeks,
Dallas
right?
gets to be the 5 seed.
Yes. But no, she's a good sport.
Like, one, can't believe it's already week 15.
Yeah.
And two, we're a week away from some jolly guy going down chimneys and leaving people
Chimneys.
chimneys.
Chimney Cheru.
All I do is get mocked.
Yeah, that's all you do. All righty. Well, let's try to get back on track here a little
All
bit.
right, we
We
will.
had some exciting games, and Mike is going to lead us right into the first game that we had on
Oh yeah,
Thursday
it was.
night, which was more of an atrocity than anything else.
You know why I love those kinds of games?
Why is
Because
that?
Al Michaels sounds so thrilled when he's
Oh,
doing. Shout out to the GOAT, Al Michaels. But as Mark said, Thursday night, so the Las Vegas Raiders of Oakland defeat the Los Angeles Chargers of San Diego by a score of, I'm going to say this very slowly and then repeat it, 63-21. I reiterate, 63-21. The Raiders, 4 days after getting goose egged by the Vikings, put up a franchise record in points. So here are just statistics, and then we will dive into the game itself. For the Chargers, Easton Stick was 23 of 32 for 257 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. Joshua Palmer had 4 catches, 113 yards, and a touchdown. Now for the Raiders, Aiden O'Connell, 20 of 34, 248 yards and 4 touchdowns. And some guy named Devontae Adams, 8 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown in the Raiders win. The Raiders go to 6-8, while the Chargers go to 5-9. And we will get into the aftermath of what happened with the Chargers after we dissect the game. But here's the 3 things you need to know. After the first quarter, it was 21-0 Raiders. At halftime, it was 42-0 Raiders. And Richard Sherman at halftime said the Chargers should make history and fire Brandon Staley at halftime. That's all you need to know.
let me tell you, this game, I don't know who was thinking what or what was going through the mind of many players. What could have been being shut out 3-0 the week before, But Aiden O'Connell, stepped up and played a brilliant game, and now is pretty much solidified, at least in my opinion, who the starting quarterback is in Las Vegas. This is the kid who should have been from the start. You know, 4 touchdowns, and has Devontae Adams finally found the reason why he left, and now he has another kind of Rogers looking like guy, throwing him the ball. Kind of has the mustache and it's about Rogers' height. So, could this be what Devontae Adams was missing all along?
I think it's I think you're right. in the sense of not what Devontae Adams was looking for, because I think he was looking to be reunited with his college teammate Derek Carr. But I think you're right in the sense of I think Aiden O'Connell has to go into next year as the presumptive favorite to be the Raiders starting quarterback. If I remember the contract correctly on Garoppolo, I don't think next year is really guaranteed.
Okay.
For him. And by the way, they signed to I think it was a 3-year deal. So there might be a team out there who would say, you know what, we could take a chance on Jimmy G to be, if not the starter, compete for the starting job, or he could be a somewhat reliable backup if he could stay healthy. But I think the Raiders should roll Aiden O'Connell, and maybe you bring in a guy like an Andy Dalton to back him up, just
Okay.
just a respectable veteran who could help him.
I
I
was
think
about to
the
say
other,
it could help him point out the things he's making mistakes
yeah,
on.
that's what Andy Dalton would now what Andy Dalton specializes in.
Hmm.
Sorry, Bryce Young, but the other thing to me, and I found it really interesting because when they interviewed Antonio Pierce coming into the second half, and he said, we got to keep our foot on the gas pedal despite it being 42-0 because he knows nothing's guaranteed. Like the the Raiders played so hard, or have played so hard under Antonio Pierce. And it makes me kind of wonder, like, I get it. You're gonna do your head coaching search, however you want to go about it. I'm not opposed to giving Antonio Pierce the job and giving him respectable coordinators to see how this thing works.
The other thing you have to now take into consideration is, yeah, the Raiders are 6-8, but that AFC playoff scenario list, there is a scenario where the Raiders could go to the playoffs. I mean, we'll get into that later, but would that say that the Raiders have faith in their new head coach to go on and this team getting behind him the way it is? Is this the type of scenario that every ownership dreams of? Is your team wanting to follow your coach into the fire?
Well, here's the couple of things they're going to have to face, though, if they want to get in. They have a loss to the Dolphins if that were to come through it,
Okay.
come ahead. They have a loss to the Bills, which also right now is not a good sign. They have a loss to the Steelers. We'll get into them in a few minutes. Uh, Beat the Patriots. Excuse me. And then their last 3 games, they're at Arrowhead next week, actually on Christmas Day. Then they go to Indianapolis. That's a huge game right now. And they end the year against the Broncos.
So they have to win out.
They have to win out and they got to get some help. Now, the good thing they've got is they do have one kind of big tiebreaker. They do own a win over the Jets.
That's true.
So if the Jets find themselves back into this thing and the Raiders would have the advantage as they have the tiebreaker.
So, I
Go
mean, I
ahead.
guess I'm sorry. So, I mean, if you look at it, there's a Cinderella possibility the Raiders make it into the playoffs, and that would be absolutely amazing for football this year. Would they be the Baltimore Orioles story of the NFL?
The thing would be anything that happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That's
Yeah.
the saying. And
But I want to see if this Aiden O'Connell, Devontae Adams relationship, I mean, just what they put together in one game, it's not just a one game thing. I want to see if they can do this the next 3 games And I'm not saying they have to win all three. If they want to go to the playoffs, they do. But let's say they go 2-1, but Devontae Adams has 8 to 10 receptions a game for 100 yards and a touchdown. We could be seeing next year's premier wide receiver quarterback combo.
Well, and here's the other part. Like, if Aiden O'Connell's going to be the starter next year, there'd be, in my opinion, there never was a point to trading Devontae Adams if the Raiders were to explore down that pathway. Like, I know Adam Schefter said a couple of weeks ago, like the Jets want to re-explore that. Like, yeah, of course, Aaron Rodgers wants to re-explore that, but the Raiders don't have to give him up. Like, the
Right.
Raiders don't have to do anything. They could say, no, he's here, and things are going maybe not as smooth as the Raiders would have hoped, but they have a vision of what they want Aiden O'Connell to Devontae Adams to be. And again, will depend on who the next head coach of the
Right.
Raiders is.
Right.
All right. Flip side, we'll get into the aftermath of the Chargers in a minute, but we all knew going in there was no Justin Herbert, there was no Keenan Allen, there was no Joey Bosa. I don't care. The Chargers quit on Thursday night.
Oh, yeah.
You have Kirk Herbstreit questioning their effort. You have that whole halftime panel questioning their effort. You might as well have just forfeited the game. The only person I'm not going to put fault on is Easton Stick, and that's because he's making his first NFL start in his fifth season.
And he had a great game. I mean, stat wise, 23 of 32, 257, 3 touchdowns and an interception. That's a great debut for any rookie quarterback coming into a game. So, I mean, if anybody's considering giving him a grade individually, I give him an A minus. I give him the minus because he has the interception.
And listen, those things are going to happen. But there's no universe in which Austin Eckler should have 5 carries in a game. There's no universe in which, and listen, I get it. There was no Keenan Allen, but that means your focal point of this offense should have been Austin Eckler.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it's running the ball. I don't care if it's catching it out of the backfield. I get it. The Raiders are expecting it, but there's no one on this offense as explosive as Austin Eckler. And I don't know. I get it. I know Austin Eckler's probably not back in LA next year, based on
Probably not.
probably based on the contract situation. But I just thought for a couple of things, I thought Kellen Moore had a bad night calling plays that way, and I just watched the effort of the tackling defensively. It was non-existent.
Look, as somebody who's had Kellen Moore play for him, coach for him, I said the moment he's going to, I said he is the worst thing that could happen to the Chargers. It is shown not only in their record, it is shown now on that team that is giving up. This is the same thing with the Cowboys last year. Kellen Moore should not be a head coach. And I know that it looks like buying him for now, we'll get to that in a second, where he is, but in other situations, Kellen Moore is a cancer and does not understand offensive football.
I actually think Kellen Moore could be a good head coach, but that's a conversation for another day. But it's for a team that needs a spark. But I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it. I think the Chargers are the biggest disappointment in football this year at 5-9. And this is a team that's going to go through some drastic changes. We'll go into what they did after the game in a second, but next year, Justin Herbert's new contract kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
So for a team that I can deem one of the most talented rosters in football, that's going to take some cutbacks because they've invested into Herbert now. So what happens with a Keenan Allen? What happens potentially with a Khalil Mack?
Mm-hmm.
You know, this roster, now they're lucky in the fact of they've drafted well over the years, but they're going to need to keep hitting in the draft or signing low key vet free agents because of the Herbert contract and what the quarterback market looks like now. So, all right. Speaking of after the game, Friday morning, I guess afternoon here on the East Coast, the Chargers announced the firing of head coach Brandon Staley and general manager Tom Telesco. They fired some other assistant coaches, but Staley's done after really 2.5 years, basically 3 years.
Yeah.
So Staley out, Tom Telesco out. I wrote a piece about this on the network.
Yeah.
You read it there, www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com. But Mark, your thoughts there.
It wasn't a surprise, but kind of a surprise. I mean, I knew they were both, at least one of them were going to be gone at the end of the season. I just didn't expect it to be done last night, let alone both of them last night. So, yeah, out and gone. Right now, if you're going to stick it out for the rest of the season, what I just said is going to happen. Unfortunately, it's Kellen Moore is going to now step up as the head coach. That's going to make this team even worse because he's going to want to call all the plays. He can't call offense. He destroyed Dallas, and you can see it by Dallas doing away with him. It can work in other ways, but I'm sorry. I feel bad for Chargers fans, but this was gonna happen. I just don't think it should have happened until completely after the season.
They did announce uh who the interim head coach is. It is Giff Smith.
Okay.
If
So
you know who Giff Smith is, I want to say he was like the linebackers coach.
I'm not sure. What I was going to say is so they don't make Kellen Moore the head coach, but he'll still be calling the offense. So either
Yeah,
way.
he's the interim head coach, and JoJo Wooden is the interim general manager.
Okay.
But again, this is just it's another year where the Chargers, who we expect to compete with the Chiefs, have underachieved. And listen, now next year the pressure is going to be on one person in LA, and it's Justin Herbert. Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson makes the playoffs at a consistent level for the most part. Josh Allen is a playoff quarterback consistently. The guy in Kansas City is the best quarterback in football. No one's gonna deny him.
Correct.
The guy who was picked before you in Miami looks like he's on his way to playing in the playoffs.
All right.
At some point, Justin Herbert, it's on you to put this team over the top.
Right. And it has to be as soon as next season.
Right. Because truth be told, Charger fans, it needed to be this season because next year, this roster is going to change
Mm-hmm.
because of his contract. And unfortunately, we live in an era where we do compare players to the money they make. But it's just the basis of where we are as a society, but it's also a basis of where we are in sports as a whole. I mean, we could talk about Mark's guy, Dak Prescott. What do we think he's worth next year? Well, if the Dallas Cowboys win a Super Bowl, he's going to be worth a MasterCard or two. You know, we have to go through this in a certain way. But the pressure's on Justin Herbert. The Rams won a Super Bowl. They share a stadium with you. The AFC is going to be loaded for the next, well, I'd say next decade, but the next 5, 6 years, the AFC is going to be loaded with talent. It's time for Justin Herbert to step up. Otherwise, every moniker you give him of a top 5, 6 quarterback of the league, it's not going to come to fruition. All right. Speaking of Joe Burrow, he's going to lose his job to another guy named JB as Jake Browning and the Bengals defeated Jake Browning's old team, the Minnesota Vikings, by a score of 27-24 in overtime yesterday afternoon. Browning, 29 of 42, 324 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. T. Higgins had both touchdowns. Joe Mixon, 47 yards rushing and a touchdown. For the Vikings, Nick Mullins, 26 of 33, 303 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Ty Chandler, 132 yards rushing and a touchdown. And Jordan Addison, 6 catches, 111 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
And I said Jordan Addison was going to be one of the most valuable players in this year's draft, too.
And by the way, he's showing up. Him and Jefferson. If you get Jefferson locked up long-term Minnesota, you're going to have one of the best receiving duos in the league.
Would it be better than Jordan? Let's put that to you right now. Hot mic.
Okay.
Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, are they better or could be better than Chris Carter and Randy Moss?
Could they be better? Yes. Will they be better? No.
Okay, fair answer.
Because Randy Moss and Chris Carter, we're talking 2 Hall of Famers. And here's the biggest question going forward for the Vikings. I don't know who the quarterback is next year. Kirk Cousins is a free agent. And listen, Mark will attest to this. Nobody in America, with the exception of maybe his family, loves Kirk Cousins more than I do. That being said, I don't know how wise it would be of the Vikings to give a 4 or 5 year contract to 36-year-old Kirk Cousins without having a backup plan. So they're going to have to figure out who their quarterback is next year. Now, maybe they go out and draft a guy to sit behind Kirk Cousins for a year, which isn't a bad thing. Who knows?
There's going to be plenty to choose from.
Right. So you're going to have that opportunity. But that being said, listen, the Vikings are still alive in the NFC playoff race, mainly for this fact. One, the NFC's crap. Let me rephrase it. The bottom of the NFC is really bad. And 2, they still have 2 games left with the Lions.
Let me tell you, and good segue as we'll segue that to the Lions next. The Lions and the Vikings are going to be 2 great games and that perfect timing too at the end of the year when everything was looking so good for the Vikings and then went pleh, and then everything was looking so good for the Lions and then their defense went pleh. Now is becoming more and more of interesting games. And speaking of the Lions, they finally up. Mike, go ahead. What were you gonna say? No.
I was gonna say we'll get there in a minute because I wanted to hit the Bengals.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean the Bengals 8-6. they're right now in the I would say in the thick, but I think right now they're in a playoff spot. And here's an interesting question because you posed one to me. I know everyone hates putting tabs on Coach of the Year. If the Vikings, if the Bengals find a way into the playoffs without Joe Burrow, I'm not sure how bad Jamar Chase's injury was from yesterday. That which is
Yeah,
really scary for them. Could Zach Taylor sneak in as Coach of the Year?
definitely think he'll be worth mention in the finalists. I don't know if he would get it. You have to see who else is up for it and just see the justifications. But there is no reason why your statement is wrong. There's a definite possibility.
And by the way, T. Higgins, first off, thanks for the fantasy points, bud. Needed that.
That was some, I mean, that was some reach. I mean, that was Odell Beckham armish reach.
Hmm. And the other thing is, he's going to get paid this offseason, whether it's by the Bengals or someone else. He's going to get his. And he's had a rough year when it comes to staying healthy, but he proved yesterday what happens when he can't. That he came up huge in the absence of Jamar Chase. So
Absolutely.
the Bengals moved to 8-6. The Vikings 7-7, still alive. They have 2 meetings left with the Lions. You're right. We'll segue into it. The Lions tamed the Broncos last night. I score 42-17. Jared Goff 278 yards and 5 touchdowns. Jameer Gibbs had 100 yards rushing in the touchdown. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, 7 catches, 112 yards, and a touchdown for the Lions in the win. For the Broncos, Russell Wilson, 225 yards and a passing touchdown. Also had a rushing touchdown. And Jerry Jeudy had 3 catches for 74 yards. The Lions are now a good 10-4, good buddy. And the Broncos go to 7-7 as well. Um, I think there was one key mark to this game. Jared Goff didn't turn the ball over.
Jared Goff had his ailments over the last couple of weeks, which really kind of had people, mainly me, second guessing is what's going on here. Is the Lions line team really real? Now, mind you, the Broncos aren't any real statement of a team, but Jared Goff has returned to what he was and 5 touchdowns. Now, as Mike already gave the other two stats being Gibbs and St. Brown, gotta remember Sam Laporta here.
Yep.
This guy is putting on a show this season. There is no reason or doubt in my mind he is the front runner for Rookie of the Year. I don't see any other offensive rookie this year. No offense, CJ Stroud, but I think Sam Laporta has it eyed up right now. Mike disagree with me. This is just
No,
in
no,
my
no.
opinion.
My one thing, I'm sorry to cut you off, is I wish they would diversify those awards. Like offensive quarterback of the or rookie quarterback of the year. Who's the best rookie receiver of the year? Best rookie tight end. Because we fall into this thing, and I'll get back to you in a second.
Mhm.
It's similar with the MVP voting. Like everyone wants it to be a quarterback, but at the end of the day, the quarterback might not be the most valuable player. He
Right.
just gets all the spotlight because we live in a quarterback driven NFL.
And you're 100% right though. And that's what it's become to be as you've looked at the likes of Jackson, Allen, and whatnot. It's just all the focus is there, and especially on the guys who can not just run it. I mean, not just throw it, but can also have great success running it. Um, the Lions are this one of the scariest teams in the NFC because we've seen two sides of a football team throughout this season. The first one being this monstrous offense of team, great defense stopping you know, opposing offenses, and not with just weak ones, strong ones as well. But then we've also seen the sputtering offense that's able to put up your 21, 24 points a game, but the defense is letting up 35 to 40 points a game. The defense just disappeared. Has Philadelphia experimented, gone. Unbelievable. And then re-showed up this week. So let's hope this is a good change for Detroit and they get back to winning out because with their little sputter, it kind of let the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers into the playoff hunt a little bit more. So, I mean, as for Denver, I'm sure all Denver fans who thought the Russell Wilson deal was the greatest thing for Denver since skis were invented, I don't think are going to not want another quarterback in there as soon as possible. I did, even though what they gave up for him, it's time to find out what it is to cut him loose, what that cost is, because he's a cancer in that team. And yes, I've said that about another player because all the focus, all the money, all the attention, everything is going right to him. Nobody else is getting that spotlight.
Yeah, and that defense had been playing so well up until last night for Denver. I think the one thing about Detroit, and you might know a little bit more than about this than me, so you're right about them. They're the one team in the NFC. I think they need home field advantage. I think they just play so much better at home than they do in the road. They have the friendly confines of Ford Field. Henry Ford is there for them at all points. I know they're not going to get it because San Francisco's better than they are. Uh, Dallas, well, actually, we'll find out in 2 weeks if Dallas is better than they are. But that's a game in Dallas. And Philly's probably better than they are. But if they can be competitive in a road playoff game, that's the sign of the Lions progressing. Because I, opposite of Denver, I think they have to lock up Jared Goff. I think he's the quarterback. You're right on Laporta. Laporta's to this offense, I think what prime Jimmy Graham was to the Saints. And Dan
Yeah,
Campbell, I think, was on that staff in New Orleans. Then you get into Amon-Ra St. Brown, who might be the most underappreciated wide receiver in football.
absolutely.
And then you add in maybe a full season of Jamison Williams. Maybe he's better as a slot guy than he is a number two. If you got to bring in another receiver, no one's going to be against that. And then they have this two-headed monster at running back. David Montgomery, who's had a really nice year, and Jahmyr Gibbs, who had a breakout game last night.
Great game.
I think arguably it was his best game.
Of this season? Well, yeah, this is his rookie season. I caught myself.
But the strength of the Lions is their trenches, their offensive line and their defensive line. If they win those, they're going to win games.
And their offensive line has really not faltered. It's really stood very strong, but that defensive line over the last few weeks has not done what it was so good doing the first 3 and 4 games of the season, was sacking the quarterback, which they were doing an average of almost 4 sacks a game. And now it's been down to, before this game last night, down to one a game. And you can't win a game where you're getting one sack, let alone no pressure.
Yeah, so that's where we're at. We have one other game to talk about from Saturday, and that was the Indianapolis Colts beating the Pittsburgh Steelers by a score of 30-13. The Gardner, 18 of 28, 215 yards, 3 touchdowns. And for the Steelers, Mitch Trubisky, 169 yards, a touchdown, and interception. Steelers 7-7. The Colts go to 8-6. Look, I think you can make the same case Shane Steichen as you can Zach Taylor, Coach of the Year. I'm done on the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm done on the Pittsburgh Steelers. 7-4 to 7-7. And I don't want to hear Jack about how Kenny Pickett would make this team any better. I really don't. Kenny Pickett can go build me a picket fence for Pete's sake. This offensive line stinks. The effort of George Pickens stinks. This defense was spotted a 13-0 lead and blew it. And I hate saying it because I have so much respect for the guy. I'd move on from Mike Tomlin. I'm not saying it's all Mike Tomlin's fault, but sometimes you need a new voice. And I think they've tuned out Mike Tomlin. I think the Steelers need to figure this thing out before they find themselves in a very precarious situation, which the Steelers have not found themselves in probably in the last 60 years.
You know, here's a quick one for you, Mike. Has Gardner Minshew, considering he's a free agent at the end of this year, has he basically written his ticket that he will be a number one QB somewhere next year? Whether it's in Indianapolis, with remind you there's Anthony Richardson, or somewhere else.
I think he should be a number one quarterback. I I have a hard time on why some of these teams have given up on him. Like the Jags, I still never understand. Unless I get it, they drafted Trevor Lawrence, no one's gonna fault them. But I look at a team that's gonna need a quarterback, or at least allow him to compete for the job. Don't just outright give it to the other guy. Like, why couldn't he be the quarterback of the Bucs next year?
Right,
I have no issues with him being a starter.
right. I mean, I don't think I've seen him this locked in this game. Mind you, he only threw, 28 times, but he was pretty solid throughout that game entirely, finding not only Michael Pittman Jr., found Mo Alley Cox, he was spreading the ball around nicely. I mean, Trey Sermon had 88 yards on the ground, so he had a lot to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And they just came away with that win. And again, they were down. Like you said, Pittsburgh was spotted a 13-0 lead, and Gardner Minshew just turned it around. So whether, they make the playoffs or not, Coach possibly has a good chance at Coach of the Year. He's definitely got to be up there with the voting. But where Gardner Minshew ends up, I don't know right now. But yes, he'll be a number one QB, whether he agrees to stay in Indianapolis, which I don't see happening because of Anthony Richardson. But there are teams that can use a number one, and where he goes, we'll end up seeing.
Yeah, the one thing about Indianapolis is going to be this: if Richardson's back and he's healthy, he could let it rip with his. He's as good as anybody. The question's going to be this: if Minshew, argument's sake, he goes back to Indy, the minute Anthony Richardson struggles, the fans are going to want Minshew back in, and that's the one area where you're going to have to be very, very careful if you're the Indianapolis Colts. But listen, I wouldn't be opposed to him going back there. I wouldn't be opposed to him in Tampa. I wouldn't be opposed to him in list off the places we think need quarterbacks. I think Gardner Minshew could fit. Arguments like where would the New York, excuse me, where would the New York Jets be if Gardner Minshew had played instead of Zach Wilson early in the year? Shout
That's
out
a
Zach
good
Wilson.
point right there.
Yeah. So listen, it is what it is.
Right.
All right. Speaking of Zach Wilson, we'll touch on this very quickly because it's been reported last night that Zach Wilson's backup, Aaron Rodgers, could be likely cleared by next week. Whether he plays or not, we don't know. I think a lot depends on today's result when they play the Dolphins. I've said it before, I've said it, I'll say it again. This is Aaron Rodgers' show. If Aaron Rodgers wants to play, Aaron Rodgers can play. Like Mark, you texted me the Jets would be so dumb and foolish to let him play. And I don't disagree with you. But we know who's running the show.
Well, now, yeah, after I didn't even think they make the announcement, let alone leak it that far as they did.
Well, remember, they opened up the 21-day window. So if he's not activated by Wednesday, I think it is, he can't play for the season.
Well, let's hope somebody says oops and forgets to submit the paperwork.
Well, let me ask you this part, two-part question. If they win, they're going to activate him. If they win today, they activate. And he'll play the last 3 games against the Commanders, the Browns, and the Patriots. You lose today, do you just say forget it and come back next year at 100%?
I'm sorry, I say either way,
Okay.
he should not play. I know to the chagrin of all Jets fans out there. No, there is if you were 10-3, maybe activate him because you're going to go to the playoffs. And I know that's what Mike just said, and that contradicts what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I said maybe, but this is not the case. Do not activate him. Sit him no matter what. Okay? I'm going to go right to you, Mike.
Nope, you're good. Keep going.
Sit him no matter what. He's not Zach Wilson's age where he can go chasing after cougars on his off time. He's 40 years old. Sit down, young boy, and just act your age and realize you can't come back yet. I know there's a lot of people out there who are watching that are laughing at me right now saying, what the hell does this guy know? I don't know. He could come back and have an amazing resurgence with today's medical, technology and today's medical genius. Still, he's not a young guy. God forbid he gets hit, his foot gets stuck like it did or whatnot. You're talking about this guy's life now, longevity of it. One more severe injury there, he'll be lucky to walk again. Mike.
2 things, because you hit on something that's key. Because he's been practicing, he does this or that. It's good to mention that because in practice, there's no pass rush. Nobody can touch him. In a game situation, he's gonna get hit behind that offensive line, which hasn't been good. That's the negative. Here's the other negative for me. Zach Wilson's coming off the best game of his career last week against the Houston Texans. Why does it have to be now? Why do you, Aaron Rodgers, and quite frankly, this goes to the Jets organization. Zach Wilson played best game last week. Now, oh, we can activate Aaron this next week. We're going to leak this. What does that do for the kid's confidence?
Exactly.
Because now, if he doesn't play well, guess what happens if he doesn't play well today? Well, we're not going to activate Aaron. Zach Wilson's the quarterback for the rest of the year. You're just plummeting his trade value. And if he plays great and you activate Aaron Rodgers, hey, good job, kid. You're going to sit on the bench now for Aaron. Like, Zach Wilson is in a lose-lose situation. Aaron Rodgers, but here's where Aaron Rodgers wins. Aaron Rodgers could kick his feet up and know he's got every Jet fan and he's got every Jet organization person in the palm of his hand. Because you said something interesting. You said you're not a young man anymore. So what if, argument's sake, Jets win today? Aaron Rodgers gets activated. Week 17, they play the Cleveland Browns. Myles Garrett's in on the pass rush. Aaron's got to escape the pocket. He comes up lame again. And he either re-injures his Achilles or it's something else. You know what you just did? You forced Aaron Rodgers into retirement. And after what you just did to Zach Wilson's not your quarterback next year. So you're in the same starting point you were in before you got Aaron Rodgers.
And gave all those draft picks away.
So if I'm Joe Douglas, if I'm Robert Saleh, I'm thinking very, very carefully. Because if Zach Wilson doesn't play well today and you lose, there's no point to activating Aaron Rodgers. Now, if you win and you activate Rodgers, okay, but you don't have a lot of tiebreakers. That's the other part of this. Hell, this is a team that gave up 27 points to the Chargers. And I only say that because the Chargers just fired their head coach. That's a whole nother conversation. So you're in a not a good spot if you're the Jets. That's all I'm going to say. All right. On to some clinching scenarios in week 15, because I know everyone loves a good old-fashioned clinching scenario because we are so close to the playoffs. We'll start in the NFC with Mark's beloved Philadelphia Eagles, who can clinch a playoff spot multiple ways, but here's the simplest. Win. If the Eagles beat the Seahawks tomorrow night, they're in the playoffs.
Correct.
And or some teams have to lose. They've already gotten one team to lose, and that was the Vikings, but that's it. All right. The Dallas Cowboys can get into the playoffs with a win over the Bills.
Here we go.
Or a loss by the Buccaneers, a Lions win, which happened, and a 49ers win. Or a Buccaneers loss, a Lions win, or a Rams loss. Or they really just need the Buccaneers to lose. I don't know how that works, but
yes.
All right. No, that's still Dallas. Sorry, people. The Lions could clinch a playoff spot today. They beat Denver, but they need the Seahawks to lose.
Okay.
Or they need the Packers to lose.
Okay.
Or they need the Rams to lose because they already got a Viking loss.
Right. Okay.
So they need some of these other teams to lose. Okay. The San Francisco 49ers are already in the playoffs, but they can win the NFC West today with either a win over the Cardinals or a Rams loss to the Commanders.
Well, I don't think the Rams are going to lose, but whatever.
But
I'm
when
I'm sorry, they're playing the Cardinals. I mean, unless they switch their name to the Philadelphia Eagles, they win this game.
listen, the Cardinals are playing for their own lives. They get eliminated today with a loss.
I don't think they care.
I don't think they care either. But so the Cardinals could get eliminated today, as can the Washington Commanders. There's been wide speculation Ron Rivera's fired after this year anyway.
Yep.
And the Panthers are already eliminated. All right. So the Baltimore Ravens can clinch a playoff spot with a win over the Jaguars, or the Steelers lose, which happened,
It happened.
and then either the Bills, Broncos, Browns, or Texans have to lose.
Well,
So,
the Bills are going to lose, so that's okay.
and that's the only clinching scenario in the AFC is the Baltimore Ravens. All right. The Bills are going to listen. I hope the Cowboys win. You know what?
Yes.
Let's start there. Let's start with the big one in
Okay.
Buffalo. We got the Cowboys. We got the Bills. We got a. What year was that Super Bowl?
92, 93, 93, 94.
All right. Super Bowl rematch. We got Jim Kelly against Troy Aikman, Andre Rison against Michael Irvin,
Andre Reed.
Andre Reed, Andre Rison. I got Andre Rison on the mind for some reason. Falcon legend.
Yes.
Sherman against Emmett Smith. Someone called Jimmy. Get Jimmy on the sideline instead of Mike McCarthy. All right. So the big debate on the sports debate shows, which who's this a bigger game for, Dak or the Bills? I don't know where you stand up on this, but it's got to be the Bills.
Okay, if I'm not the Dallas fan, I'm going to play it as the bias side, and I'm on the outside looking in. I don't disagree with you there. Okay, now let's flip it back. I'm going back to being who I am because it's going to be true to me. This is a big game for Dallas because, mind you, 10-3 is a comfortable way to sit. And you know how I hate the term comfortable. It bothers me
It
because
makes you
that's where
comfortably numb.
and this is where teams collapse. I think Dallas has to go into this game, whether it's raining, snowing, Santa's blocked off, or the old man can't get up. Doesn't matter. They have to go into this game like they did every game before it. And that is with this fast moving offense and this strong coverage defense with this constant pass rush, whether it's from Micah Parsons or Marquise Bell on the bottom or Dexter Lawrence and Maz Smith, the way they're doing it and getting players to move around is unreal. And Dan Quinn, I am
Who should be a head
scared,
coach
is going to
somewhere.
end up a head coach somewhere else. There is nothing in my mind that he is it is well deserved. The only thing that I can say is when Dallas wins the Super Bowl, Jerry says, "Okay, you did it. Goodbye." Kicks Mike McCarthy out, names Dan Quinn the head coach, just so Dan doesn't leave. It's not like Jerry is not used to that situation anyway.
I still think Jerry hires Belichick. I don't know why. I'm just putting that one out there. Um,
Oh.
But I want to ask you this because I think there are two guys on the Cowboys. They're going to miss today. They're going to miss Trayvon Diggs, and I think they're going to miss Leighton Vander Esch because Leighton Vander Esch, I think, would play the role of a spy against Josh Allen. Now, yes, they have Micah Parsons, who they like to move around and do stuff with, but Vander Esch, I think, would have played the role of spy because you want Parsons playing the role of pass rusher in this spot.
Right. I
So
don't disagree with you there.
I think that's where the two guys they'll miss. But Deron Bland's been really good, and Stephon Gilmore had a great game last week against Philly.
Hmm.
Now, the other part, just the flip side, both these teams are coming off huge wins. Dallas over Philly, Buffalo over Kansas City, and somewhere Kadarius Toney still offsides. But the thing for me on the Bills and why this game I think is more important for the Bills, one, it's a home game. So the weather could be an advantage for them because Dallas plays in a dome. So the weather could play a factor. Two, the Bills need this game obviously to stay alive, but I think the Bills need this game just to kind of a reset on how they started the year, how things have gone for them. Do I think it happens? No, I think the Cowboys actually go in there and win. But I'd like to see what the Bills do because last week Stephon Diggs was kind of a non-factor offensively. I wonder how they line that up against former Bill legend Stephon Gilmore because I'm going to presume that's the matchup. I'm going to presume
Uh,
Gilmore and Diggs is the matchup. But the guy the Cowboys need to step up defensively, DeMarcus Lawrence. That's the guy. Micah Parsons is probably going to get quadruple team. DeMarcus Lawrence is probably going to get one-on-one a lot. He's got to win, and they have to find ways to bring down Josh Allen. That's where they have to win this game. If the Cowboys win in the trenches, the Cowboys win this game. I think they could take advantage of a Bills secondary that's banged up. I think you're going to see, depending on the weather, I think you're going to see some fireworks in Buffalo. But right now, I don't know if I could pick against the Cowboys the way they're playing.
the Cowboys are on a huge tear over the last 6 games.
I mean, they're the second best team in the NFC. And I think you can make the case right now they're the third best team in the NFL. I
And
can't put them in front of San Francisco after
no,
what San Francisco did to them. And the Ravens are playing so well.
and they are. I don't disagree with you at all on either one of those statements. Beating Philadelphia, I think Dallas turned the corner of all the naysayers out there, has really shut them all up. And now Dallas can get that out of their vision
Mm-hmm.
and that line going straight to the Super Bowl. Because I don't think, yes, what San Francisco did to them is happened. It's not a fantasy. They will meet again, and we'll see who in the NFC Championship, whether it be Dallas, whether it be San Francisco, goes to the Super Bowl. But yes,
Yeah. So
this Dallas team is on a tear, and I don't think anyone can stop them. But yes, the NFC Championship game should be Dallas, San Francisco again.
and yeah, of course, Dallas, Philly, they'll figure out who's gonna play, who's gonna win the East, who's gonna go on the road. But it's a story for another day. Cowboys, Bills. That's the 425 game. I think on
Yes.
Fox, right? It's Fox.
Yippers.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we brought up Philly. Might as well talk about them too. They're on Monday. They're on Monday night. They'll play the Seahawks, who are also clinging to dear life the playoffs. I think this is a must-win game for Philly.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't say that just to keep pace with the Cowboys, but I say it because this isn't your Eagles team of last season, people. They're not as good as they were. I think Jalen Hurts is hurt. There's something definitely wrong. He's not running with the same authority as he did. Listen, they've got a great duo with Brown and Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert came back last week. They're not winning the trench battle. And if they're not winning in the trenches, they're not winning because they've changed this offense from we want to run the ball down your throat to we want to throw the ball. Yes.
Sorry, Mike. Just came through off ESPN. Jalen Hurts has been downgraded to questionable for tomorrow night's game.
Yeah, with an illness, I believe is the
Yes, I don't. Obviously, you knew this, but they are now dropping him downwards. They are now working with the backup as taking first reps.
wow. So if he doesn't play, that changes the whole trajectory of that game. And to be honest, it's a game where if Seattle has Geno Smith and not Drew Lock, that game can be very reminiscent of the Cowboys Seahawks game because
Mm-hmm.
the the Eagles secondary won't have Darius Slay, who's out after getting knee surgery,
Right.
and this Eagles secondary hasn't been good all year.
It's more cry Eagles cry than fly Eagles fly.
Yeah, this is not the same team. Now, I'm not saying that they're not going to, they'll make the playoffs. I'm not saying they can't go on a run. What I'm saying is this just doesn't. I know they're 10-3 or whatever the record is. At the moment, they just don't look like the same team as they did last year.
Right.
So they go to Seattle. They'll play the Seahawks tomorrow night. Seahawks again playing for their playoff lives. Speaking of playing for the playoff lives, the NFC South exists.
It
And if the
does.
NFC South didn't exist, we didn't have to talk about some of these games. But the Bucks, who currently lead the NFC South after beating the Falcons last week, they go to the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. My Chris Berman impression needs some work. But we got the Bucks, we got the Packers, rematch of the 2020 NFC Championship game, but it is not Tom Brady against Aaron Rodgers. It is Baker Mayfield against Jordan Love.
How about a little love for love? Or maybe not.
I mean, he's played well, and he just last week he ran into Danny DeVito, and he lost.
Uh,
But look, I think if you're a Packer fan, I'm not saying Jordan Love is going to be what Rodgers or Brett Favre was, but he's shown signs that he could be something. And which earlier in the year, I'll be the first person to say it. I was down on Jordan Love. I was showing no love to Love. But the big thing for me for the Packers, and it has to come this offseason. Yeah, you got a Romeo Dobbs, you got a Christian Watson, you got some of these guys. They need a guy. They need a number one receiver guy. By the way, a guy who on the other side wears 13. His name is Mike Evans. He'd be great in Green Bay next year if you wanted to spend the money.
I
But we
mean,
know you don't because of Aaron Rodgers.
who would think that Jaden Reed is leading this team with 48 receptions? Obviously we know that Christian Watson got injured, but even so, he only missed a few games that he should still have already. Where is this greatness that they had together? Where is this?
Where's the love?
Yeah.
Shout out the Black Eyed Peas. And flip side to the Bucks. I hate this division, the NFC South, for this reason. I can make a case for Todd Bowles to be fired. I can make a case for Arthur Smith to be fired. I can make a case for Dennis Allen to be fired. But one of them's going to keep their job because one of them's going to win this lousy division and then get steamrolled by either the Cowboys or the Eagles in the wild card round. And someone's going to be eating popcorn on their couch going, saw that coming from a mile away. But look, give Baker Mayfield some credit. The Bucks have played well. I I still don't love them, but I think they find a way on the road to get that win today. I brought up Dennis Allen and Danny DeVito in the same segue, so this is a perfect segue to talk Giants Saints. The Giants are 5-8. Mark, why?
Five.
They're 5-8. And they're alive in the playoff race.
Who? Okay, here's a team that no one believed. No, that's my bad Chris Collinsworth impression. Who would even think we'd be thinking that the Giants at this point actually have a chance at a playoff spot? And if they somehow,
License plate guy believed.
somehow wiggle, squirm, sleeves their way into the playoffs, they are going to be not only kicked right back where they sleeves crawled out from, but give me a break. I mean, the New Orleans Saints would get in if they win the division. The Giants can't win the division. The Giants don't deserve to be in the playoffs.
Well, I think, listen, I don't think the Giants deserve to be in the playoffs either. I don't think they'll get there because, one, I think DeVito Magic runs out today in New Orleans. It's a tough place to play and still pretty good defense. But after this, they play the Rams. The Rams are better than them. And they have two matchups against the Philadelphia Eagles, who, by the way, knocked them out of the playoffs last year. So while it's a nice story what Tommy DeVito's doing, the Giants are done. This is
Yes.
you are just filling people with false hope and at the same time hurting your own stock in the process because you're no longer going to be a top 5 pick in the draft. So Giants Saints is a big one. And then you know what? Sunday night, we talked about it before. Ravens Jags. It's a huge game. It's Sunday night. Chris Collinsworth will tell you here's a guy. And I don't say this as just verbatim. This is a must win game for the Jacksonville Jaguars. This isn't a game to where you compete, lose by 3, and you're okay. No. You see, there's a term I like that I hate hearing. It starts with F, ends in D. There's a row in the middle. It's called fraud. I love the Jacksonville Jaguars. I love Trevor Lawrence. I like Doug Peterson. Calvin Ridley is I gambled on Calvin Ridley so much that he's on multiple fantasy teams. And I know Christian Kirk isn't playing. But if you want to be taken for real, or to quote my guy Snoop Dogg, for Rizzle, you can't lose to Jake Browning. You can't lose to my boy Joe Flacco and then deem us to take you seriously. You want to be taken as a serious threat in the AFC? You beat the Baltimore Ravens at home on Sunday Night Football, and you prevent them from clinching a playoff spot.
I am going to completely shock you. I'm the other way. I like Sunshine, Trevor Lawrence.
Oh,
I
I
like
love it.
Travis Etienne. I also have him on a couple of fantasy teams. And Calvin, I'm gonna gamble on Ridley. I think are a great 1, 2, 3, a great triplet set.
Mhm.
However, I think Baltimore is now fully healthy and has just started to realize who they are and how dominant they can be, that they have to keep it going, to keep the continuity there, to keep that clock in perfect working order, in sync. I think if they come out and do that with the running game between, yes, obviously, um, sorry, Lamar Jackson and Gus Edwards, and then you have Beckham, who's really starting to come around a little bit more as he's improving week on and week out. Zay Flowers is having a hell of a start for a rookie, and Mark Andrews is just dominant from game start to game end. He's kind of like Travis Kelsey's alter ego. And as Travis Kelsey is, Mr. Hyde, he's the Mr. Jekyll. So, they're two competent, capable tight ends. But can't forget about Sam Laporta. But whatever. This Baltimore defense, I think, is so much better than the Jacksonville defense. And I think the defense is what's gonna win this game outright. And I think it's gonna go for Baltimore. I think this is the game of the week, not the game of the weekend, not
Mhm.
the game of the, day. This is the game of the week because there's so much that's gonna be decided in that game and from then on out.
And I think two guys on that defense who really don't listen. Roquan Smith is one of the best middle linebackers in football. Patrick Queen is going to have to play a big role tonight against ETN. But Justin Matabuki, the defensive tackle, let me tell you something. He's had a really good year, and he's kind of the engine that makes that Baltimore defense go. You're right about that defense. I think that's what separates them from everyone else in the AFC. Yeah, they got Lamar and they got Beckham, Zay Flowers. That defense plays like it has. They have the potential to beat anybody on any given night. That includes Dallas, that includes San Francisco, that includes Miami, that includes the 85 Bears. They could beat anybody. They are good enough. So I'm with you. I like Baltimore on the road, but I feel it's a must win for Jacksonville. So also should note before we wrap this up, CJ Stroud out today,
Yeah,
but it will not even be Davis Mills. Case Keenum will make the start for the Houston Texans.
yeah, he did not pass the concussion protocol for the week, so they had to keep
Yeah,
him out. He'll go through the same process next week.
it's also probably smart. He hadn't practiced all week.
Right.
And with him, I'd rather be safe than sorry. So,
Hmm.
all right, Mark, who would be your fantasy player of the day?
You never thought you would hear this from me, but my fantasy player of the day is going to be Odell Beckham Jr. He's going to have 10 receptions for 125 and a touchdown.
All right, I'm gonna go to everyone's favorite rookie running back, Bijan Robinson. The Panthers stink. It's supposed to be terrible weather. Arthur Smith, I'm begging you to unleash Bijan Robinson. Begging you. Because, as I've said on Wishbone Shotgun, What the hell is Desmond Ritter?
Yeah.
All right. That'll do it for the Week 15 edition of the Sunday Sideline Report, sponsored by the Dugout of Millwood here on the SAN YouTube channel. We're here every Sunday. Follow us on the socials on Twitter at SInsanityReal. We're also on the Facebook. Check out the website www.thesportsinsanitynetwork.com for great blogs, vlogs, planes, trains, and automobiles. And Mark, do you have anything on the Dugout of Millwood you want to promote?
Quickly on the dugout of Millwood is that we want everybody to have a wonderful, safe, happy holidays, a happy, safe New Year. We'll tell you we'll be live for National Treasures that'll be coming up. We also want to again make mention that for Mary Zolzer. Our hearts go out for her as she's going through a difficult medical time. And if all of our friends watching can go see the site and see why and what she's going through on her GoFundMe and be able to understand why we care about her so much, that anybody, if they can help at all, we would be greatly appreciative.
Yes. So, all right. For Mark, I'm Mike. We'll talk to you next week here on the Sunday Sideline Report, sponsored by the Dugout of Millwood here on the SIN YouTube channel. Enjoy Week 15, everybody.